If you've ever been the family scapegoat, hit that like button and subscribe right now. You're not going to want to miss what happened next. My name is Rebecca Chen, and for 32 years I was the family failure. The daughter who wasted her physics degree on a boring non-profit job, while my younger sister Amanda built her tech startup empire. The disappointment who lived in a modest apartment while Amanda bought a penthouse downtown. The invisible one who got mentioned last at family gatherings, if at all. What nobody knew, not my parents, not Amanda, not anyone in my family, was that my non-profit job was a carefully constructed cover. For the past 8 years, I'd been the managing director of Cascade Venture Partners, one of the most selective venture capital funds in North America. We managed $80 billion in assets. We'd backed 17 unicorns. Our investment committee made decisions that shaped entire industries. And I controlled which startups got funded and which didn't. They didn't know because I never told them. I had my reasons, and they were tested every single time my family gathered. It started 15 years ago when I graduated from MIT with a physics degree and a 3.9 GPA. My parents threw a party, but the entire event became about Amanda's new app idea. She was 17, still in high school, but she had vision. She had the entrepreneurial gene. She was going places. Rebecca's going to work at some research lab, Dad told his friends, barely concealing his disappointment. Stable, I suppose. But Amanda's going to build something that matters. I'd gotten offers from SpaceX, NASA, 3 national laboratories. I turned them all down for a junior analyst position at a small venture capital firm that nobody had heard of. My family was horrified. You spent 4 years at MIT for that? Mom had said, her voice dripping with disappointment. To be someone's assistant? Amanda could have done that without a college degree. Amanda patted my shoulder with exaggerated sympathy. It's okay, Becca. Not everyone is meant for high-level stuff. Someone has to do the behind-the-scenes work. I smiled and said nothing. Because what they didn't understand was that venture capital wasn't about doing what everyone else could see. It was about seeing what everyone else missed. It was about understanding technology deeply enough to know which innovations would scale and which would fail. My physics background wasn't wasted. It was my secret weapon. I spent 3 years learning the business. How to evaluate startups, assess founders, understand market dynamics, negotiate term sheets. I worked 70-hour weeks. I studied every successful and failed investment in our portfolio's history. I built relationships with founders, researchers, industry experts. By 25, I was a principal. By 28, a partner. By 30, managing director of Cascade Venture Partners after we spun out from our parent fund. I had final say on every investment decision. My signature on a term sheet could turn a garage startup into a billion-dollar company. My compensation package? $2.3 million base salary plus carried interest that averaged another $4 to $7 million annually. Last year, one of my early investments, a quantum computing startup, got acquired for $3.2 billion. My personal return was $47 million. I own my apartment building. I had an investment property portfolio worth $12 million. My retirement accounts exceeded $30 million. At 32, I had more wealth than my parents would see in 3 lifetimes. And I told them none of it. Instead, I let them believe I worked at Cascade Foundation, a nonprofit focused on STEM education. It wasn't entirely a lie. Cascade Venture Partners did run a nonprofit arm for STEM scholarships. I just let my family assume that was my only job. I drove a 7-year-old Subaru. I wore and tailor suits instead of designer labels. I lived modestly, spent carefully, and presented as exactly what they expected. The boring, practical daughter who played it safe. Meanwhile, Amanda's career exploded exactly the way my parents had predicted. She launched a social media analytics startup at 19, got $2 million in seed funding, and never let anyone forget it. By 25, she'd raised $15 million total across 3 rounds. By 28, she was being featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 TechCrunch Fast Company. Every family dinner became an Amanda highlight reel. Her latest partnership. Her newest hire. Her growing team, 45 employees now. Her fancy office in the tech district. Her appearances on podcasts and panels. Amanda spoke at Tech Summit last week. Mom would announce to whoever was listening. 3,000 people in the audience. Can you imagine? Dad would beam. That's my daughter. Always knew she had it in her. They'd turn to me as an afterthought. And Rebecca, how's the nonprofit? Still doing education stuff. Still there, I'd say with a smile. We gave out some scholarships this quarter. Helped a few students. That's nice, dear, Mom would say, already turning back to Amanda. So Amanda, tell us about the acquisition talks you mentioned. I watched. I listened. I took mental notes. What my family didn't see was what I saw. Amanda's company was struggling. Her social media analytics platform had competition from 5 better-funded rivals. Her growth had plateaued. Her burn rate was unsustainable. She needed new funding desperately, but the market had shifted. The metrics that impressed people 3 years ago weren't enough anymore. She needed a Series C round, $25-40 million, or she'd run out of runway within 8 months. 6 months ago, Amanda announced at Sunday dinner that she was going big. We're raising our Series C, she declared, radiating confidence. Targeting $35 million. We've got meetings with Tier 1 venture funds. This is going to be transformational. My father raised his wine glass. To Amanda, the only real entrepreneur in this family. I didn't react. I just filed the information away. Because I knew something Amanda didn't. Cascade Venture Partners was one of exactly 3 funds that regularly wrote checks that size for B2B SaaS companies. And our investment committee met every Thursday to review opportunities. If Amanda wanted $35 million from a Tier 1 fund, she'd almost certainly end up in my boardroom eventually. I wasn't wrong. 3 weeks ago, my assistant Marco buzzed my office. Rebecca, you'll want to see this. New Series C application just came through the system. Chen Analytics Group. The founder is Amanda Chen. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. Here it was. The moment I'd been watching for. Send me the full application packet. I want to review it before Thursday's meeting. The application arrived within an hour. 147 pages. Pitch deck, financial statements, growth metrics, market analysis, team bios, customer testimonials, competitive landscape, use of funds. I spent 6 hours going through every page. Not as Amanda's sister, as managing director of an $80 billion fund. The analysis was brutal. Revenue growth, 12% year-over-year. Industry standard for Series C was 100% plus. Customer acquisition cost, $47,000. Customer lifetime value, $62,000. Barely profitable on unit economics. Churn rate, 18% annually. Acceptable for early stage, concerning for Series C. Competitive positioning, 7th in market share, losing ground to top 3 players. Team, impressive credentials, but 3 key executives had left in the past year. Cash runway, 6 months at current burn rate. Classic desperation raise. The company wasn't failing, but it wasn't succeeding either. It was stuck in the middle, the worst place to be. Companies like this either pivoted dramatically or died slowly. Valuation request. $180 million pre-money. Market comps suggested $80 to $100 million was more realistic. My partner Jordan reviewed it independently and came to the same conclusion. Borderline pass. Might be salvageable with the right strategic pivot, but current trajectory doesn't justify the valuation or the risk. I called an investment committee meeting for Thursday. Amanda's pitch was scheduled for 2 p.m. I didn't tell her I'd be there. The invitation came from Marco as Cascade Venture Partners Investment Committee. Our fund was deliberately low profile. We didn't have a public-facing website or social media presence. We were a quiet fund, the kind that successful founders knew about but press releases rarely mentioned. Amanda had no idea I was involved. The week before the pitch, Amanda was insufferable at family dinner. She'd brought her COO, a sharp-dressed guy named Trevor who spent the entire meal talking about disrupting the analytics space. Thursday's the big day, Amanda announced. We're pitching to Cascade Venture Partners, one of the most selective funds in North America. If they invest, we're talking unicorn trajectory within 2 years. Dad gripped her hand. You're going to crush it, sweetheart. You always do. Amanda glanced at me with barely concealed pity. Becca, you wouldn't really understand this level of business. It's pretty high-stakes stuff. Elite circles. I'm sure you'll do great, I said mildly. Trevor leaned back confident. Most venture funds would kill to invest in Chen Analytics. Our metrics are exceptional. Thursday's more about choosing the right partner than getting funded. Mom squeezed Amanda's shoulder. My daughter playing in the big leagues. Rebecca, you must be so proud of your sister. Very proud, I said. And I meant it, proud of what she'd built even if the current state was precarious. What I didn't say was that in 6 days, I'd be the one deciding if she got her funding or not. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. Thursday arrived. I dressed in my standard boardroom attire. Armani suit, Hermes watch, minimal jewelry. Professional, authoritative, expensive without being flashy. My uniform for days when I needed to project unquestioned expertise. Our boardroom was on the 48th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 20-foot table, leather chairs, integrated presentation technology. On the walls, framed term sheets from our most successful investments. Companies that had started in garages and were now worth billions. At 1:45 p.m., I took my seat at the head of the table. My nameplate sat in front of me, Rebecca Chen, Managing Director. My 4 partners filed in, Jordan, Lisa, David and Priya. Combined, we represented 90 years of venture capital experience and some of the best investment track records in the industry. At 1:55 p.m., Marco showed Amanda and Trevor into the boardroom. I watched Amanda's face as she walked in. Her eyes swept the table, cataloging the partners, the setting, the obvious wealth and power in the room. She was nervous, trying to hide it with confidence. Trevor looked cocky, like he'd already decided this was in the bag. Neither of them looked at me directly. I was sitting at the far end of the table, backlit by the windows. Just another investor in a lineup of investors. Amanda set her laptop on the presentation podium. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Amanda Chen, founder and CEO of Chen Analytics Group, and this is Trevor Wong, our COO. We're excited to. Before we begin, Jordan interrupted, his voice professional but firm. Let me introduce the investment committee. I'm Jordan Park, senior partner. To my left is Lisa Martinez, partner focused on B2B SaaS. David Knowles, partner specializing in enterprise software. Priya Desai, partner handling portfolio operations. He turned toward me and I saw the moment of recognition flash across Amanda's face. And at the head of the table, our managing director who has final approval authority on all investments over $20 million, Rebecca Chen. The silence was profound. Amanda's mouth opened slightly. Her eyes went wide. The laptop remote slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the hardwood floor. Rebecca. Her voice came out strangled. What? I don't. You work for a non-profit. I do, I said calmly. The Cascade Foundation, our non-profit arm. I chair that as well. But my primary role for the past 8 years has been managing director of Cascade Venture Partners. I gestured to the room. This is my fund. Trevor had gone white. Your sister is Rebecca Chen? The Rebecca Chen. Amanda looked at him. What are you talking about? She's a legend in venture capital, Trevor whispered. She backed Quantum Dynamics, Neuralpath, 6 other unicorns. She has a perfect investment track record. I didn't realize. The names. I didn't connect. Amanda turned back to me, her expression cycling through confusion, shock, and something that looked like betrayal. You never told us. You let us think. I let you think exactly what you wanted to think, I said evenly. You assumed I worked at a non-profit in some junior capacity. I never corrected you because I wanted to see if my family would value me for who I was, not what I did. The answer was clear. Mom's voice echoed in my memory. Not everyone is meant for high-level stuff. Amanda's voice. Not your world. Dad's toast. The only real entrepreneur in this family. Now, I continued, my voice returning to professional mode, you're here requesting $35 million at a $180 million pre-money valuation. I've reviewed your materials extensively. Let's discuss whether Cascade Venture Partners is the right fit for Chen Analytics Group. Amanda stood frozen. Trevor grabbed her elbow. Amanda. The pitch. We need to. Right. She shook herself, trying to regain composure. Yes. Okay. The pitch was a disaster. Amanda stumbled through slides she'd clearly memorized and rehearsed 100 times. But now, delivering them to her secret venture capitalist sister, every word came out wrong. Numbers she'd recited confidently to our parents became tentative. Growth projections that sounded ambitious in theory sounded desperate in practice. Trevor tried to help, jumping in with supporting details, but he kept glancing at me nervously, which only made Amanda more flustered. 15 minutes in, I raised my hand. Let me stop you there, Amanda. I have some questions. She nodded, looking relieved to pause. Your deck shows 12% revenue growth year over year, but you're requesting a valuation that assumes 100% plus growth. Can you explain that gap? We're positioned for acceleration. The market is consolidating, I said, not unkindly but firmly. Your top 3 competitors have all raised significantly more capital than you. They're outspending you on customer acquisition by a factor of 10. How do you plan to compete? Amanda's voice was barely audible. Product differentiation. Our analytics are more sophisticated. Are they? Lisa spoke up, her tone curious but pointed. I ran a comparison using our portfolio company data stream. Your feature set is 73% identical to theirs, and they're moving faster on AI integration. Trevor jumped in. But our customer satisfaction scores are good, David agreed. Not great. Good. Your net promoter score is 47. Industry leaders are at 65 plus. You're losing customers almost as fast as you're acquiring them, which suggests a product market fit issue. I watched Amanda's face crumple slightly. This was the difference between pitching to family friends who wanted to be supportive and pitching to professional investors who needed to see reality. Let's talk about your team, Priya said. You've lost 3 executives in 12 months. Your VP of engineering, your head of sales, and your CFO. That's concerning. What happened? Growing pains, Amanda said quickly. We're at a stage where leadership can't agree on strategy, I finished quietly. I spoke with your former VP of engineering. Brilliant person, by the way. We're actually considering her for one of our portfolio companies. She said the executive team was divided on whether to pivot to enterprise or double down on mid-market. That fundamental disagreement cost you 6 months and significant talent. Amanda stared at me. You called my former employees? I do due diligence on every investment, I said simply. It's my job. The room fell silent. Jordan glanced at me, then back to Amanda. Miss Chen, let me be direct. Your company isn't dying, but it's not thriving. You're in the danger zone. Successful enough to keep going, not successful enough to break out. The $35 million you're requesting won't solve your fundamental problems. It will just extend your runway while those problems get worse. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to set boundaries with toxic family, because what I said next changed everything. However, I said, and everyone turned toward me, there is a path forward. It requires honesty about your situation and willingness to make difficult changes. Amanda looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. I pulled out a second folder I'd prepared. I've spent 6 hours analyzing Chen Analytics Group. Not as your sister, as an investor. Here's what I see. You built solid technology with a passionate team. You have 73 enterprise customers who are genuinely satisfied. Your churn among customers who've been with you over 2 years is only 4%, which is excellent. I slid documents across the table. Your problem isn't product quality. It's positioning. You're trying to be everything to everyone. Mid-market and enterprise. Analytics and consulting. US and international. You're spreading too thin. Trevor leaned forward, studying the documents. My recommendation. Pivot hard to enterprise only. Cut your mid-market customers. They're unprofitable anyway. Focus on Fortune 500 companies with complex analytics needs. Hire a new CRO with enterprise sales experience. Rebuild your engineering team around AI-enhanced analytics. Amanda was listening now, really listening. But here's the reality, I continued, my voice gentle but firm. That pivot requires $18 million, not $35 million. And your valuation should be $90 million pre-money, not $180 million. You've been overvaluing your company because you're comparing yourself to earlier stage competitors. You're not early stage anymore. You're stuck in the middle, and that requires different metrics. I opened another document. I had our team model this. With $18 million and the pivot I described, you have a 68% probability of reaching $50 million ARR within 2 years. At that point, you could raise a Series D at $400 to $500 million valuation. Or you'd be an attractive acquisition target for one of the major players at 8-10x revenue. But, David added, that requires admitting you don't have all the answers. Bringing in executive talent that has been where you need to go. Cutting customers that feel like success but are actually holding you back. Amanda looked at Trevor. Then back at me. And if I'm not willing to do that? Then Cascade passes, I said simply. And within 6 months you'll be back fundraising in a much weaker position. Probably at a down round, maybe with bridge financing from desperate sources at terrible terms. That path leads to a slow death of the company. The silence in the room was absolute. I don't understand, Amanda finally said, her voice small. Why didn't you ever tell me who you really are? We could have talked about this months ago. I could have asked for advice, for help. Would you have? I asked quietly. Would you have taken advice from your boring, non-profit working sister? The one who wasn't an entrepreneur? The one who wasn't in the big leagues? Amanda flinched. I wanted to see if you'd ever value me without knowing, I continued. If you'd ever ask about my work, my expertise, my life. In 15 years, Amanda, you never once asked me what I actually did. You just assumed it wasn't important. That's not fair, she whispered. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a note I'd been keeping. Last year's Thanksgiving. You talked about your company for 45 minutes. Mom asked me one question about my work, and before I could answer, you interrupted to talk about your new office space. Christmas. Dad toasted, the only real entrepreneur in this family. Easter. You told everyone I wouldn't understand business at your level. 3 months ago at Sunday dinner you literally said, elite business circles. Not your world. Each example landed like a physical blow. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. I'm not saying this to be cruel, I said, my voice softer now. I'm saying it because you need to understand something. Success isn't just about building a company. It's about building character. About treating people with respect regardless of what you think they can do for you. Trevor was staring at the table. But here's what I'm offering, I continued. Not as your sister. As an investor who sees potential in your company despite its current struggles. Cascade Venture Partners will invest $18 million at a $90 million pre-money valuation, contingent on 3 conditions. I slid a term sheet across the table. First, you hire an executive coach and meet weekly for 6 months. You need to develop as a leader before you can scale as a CEO. Second, you accept our nomination of a new board member, someone with enterprise software expertise who will push you out of your comfort zone. Third, you implement the strategic pivot I outlined, including cutting unprofitable customer segments and rebuilding your executive team. Amanda picked up the term sheet with shaking hands. Those terms are non-negotiable, I said. If you accept them, you'll have your funding by next week. If you don't, I wish you luck with other investors, but Cascade is out. Jordan spoke up. For context, Ms. Chen, we typically see 200 pitches for every investment we make. Your company is borderline. The only reason this deal is possible is because Rebecca sees something in the underlying business worth saving. Without her advocacy, this would have been a pass in the first 10 minutes. Amanda looked up at me, tears now running openly down her face. Why would you help me? After everything I've said, everything our family has said. Because you're my sister, I said simply. And because Grandma Lynn believed that family means showing people who they can become, not just punishing them for who they've been. Our grandmother, who'd passed away 5 years ago, had said that to me once. She'd been the only family member who seemed to see me clearly. But understand this, I continued, my voice firm. This is a business investment, not a family favor. If you take our money and don't execute on the pivot, I will remove you as CEO. I'll protect our investment and your employees' jobs, even if that means protecting them from you. Amanda wiped her eyes. That's fair. You have 48 hours to decide, I said. Talk to Trevor. Talk to your board. Think about whether you're ready to admit you need help. And Amanda. She looked up. Your company is worth saving. The question is whether your ego is ready to let you save it. The meeting ended. Trevor practically carried Amanda out, her body language showing complete shell shock. After they left, Lisa turned to me. That was intense. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said honestly. That needed to happen. One way or another. Do you think she'll take the deal? Priya asked. I give it 50-50, I said. She's smart enough to know it's her best option. But pride makes people do stupid things. Jordan nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Rebecca, I think you handled that perfectly. Firm but fair. Professional but human. That's why you're the best at what you do. I gathered my materials and returned to my office. The city sprawled below my windows, thousands of businesses fighting to survive, to grow, to matter. My phone buzzed 90 minutes later. Mom's number. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Rebecca. Mom's voice was tight. Amanda just told us everything. How could you humiliate her like that? In front of her team? She's devastated. I didn't humiliate her, Mom. I gave her honest feedback on her business. You could have told us. All these years you let us think. I let you think exactly what you showed me you thought, I said calmly. That I wasn't important enough to ask about. That my career wasn't worth your attention. That Amanda was the only real success. That's not. It is, Mom. And you know it is. How many times did you ask about my work? Really ask and listen to the answer. Silence. I'm offering Amanda the best deal she's going to get, I continued. I'm using my professional reputation to back her company despite serious concerns. I'm giving her access to resources most founders would kill for. And I'm doing it because she's my sister and I believe she can become the leader her company needs. But you're making her feel like a failure. No, Mom. I'm making her face reality. There's a difference. I heard my father's voice in the background, muffled but angry. Dad wants to talk to you, Mom said. I know what Dad's going to say, I replied. That I'm being vindictive. That I should support family unconditionally. That Amanda deserves better from her sister. Well, tell Dad this. I've spent 32 years watching him celebrate Amanda's every achievement while treating mine as insignificant. I've watched him invest in her companies while never asking about my career. I've sat through countless dinners where he toasted, the only real entrepreneur in this family, without once wondering what I actually accomplished. My voice stayed level but emotion was leaking through. So no, I don't particularly care what Dad thinks about how I run my fund or evaluate investments. He lost the right to my professional respect about 15 years ago. Rebecca. I have another call, Mom. If Amanda wants to discuss the term sheet, she has my office number. I hung up. The next 48 hours were radio silence. I threw myself into work. 2 other pitch meetings for portfolio company board calls, strategy sessions with my partners. I didn't check my phone obsessively. I didn't wait by email. I'd made my offer. Amanda would either take it or she wouldn't. Thursday afternoon, Marco buzzed my office. Rebecca, Amanda Chen is here. She'd like to speak with you if you have time. Send her in. Amanda walked into my office looking exhausted. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, jeans and a hoodie instead of her usual polished presentation. She looked more like the younger sister I remembered from college than the CO I'd seen in the boardroom. I'm taking the deal, she said without preamble. All 3 conditions. The money, the board seat, the pivot, the executive coach. Everything. Hey, I said. Sit down. Let's talk through timeline. She collapsed into the chair across from my desk. I need you to know something first. Trevor and I spent 2 days doing brutal math. You're right about everything. The valuation, the pivot, the team issues. We've been lying to ourselves for 18 months about how well things were going. That's common, I said. Founders often can't see their companies objectively. It's more than that. Amanda's voice cracked. I've been so focused on being the success story, proving I was the golden child everyone believed in, that I stopped actually running a good company. I made decisions based on what would look impressive, not what would work. She wiped her eyes. And I treated you like garbage. For years. Because it made me feel more successful to have a sister I could look down on. I didn't say anything. Just listened. Grandma Lynn used to tell me I had a gift for seeing patterns, Amanda continued. She said I could build something meaningful if I learned humility. I never understood what she meant. I thought confidence and humility were opposites. They're not, I said quietly. Confidence is knowing what you're good at. Humility is knowing what you still need to learn. You need both to succeed long term. Amanda nodded, tears flowing freely now. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, I'm going to do the work. The coaching, the pivot, everything. Not to prove something to you or mom or dad. To prove something to myself. That's the right reason, I said. I pulled out a folder. Here's what happens next. Term sheet is standard Series C with Cascade's usual protections. You'll have the money within 7 days of signature. I'm recommending Marcus Williams for your board seat. He scaled a similar company from $8 million to $200 million AR and knows the enterprise pivot better than anyone. Your executive coach will be Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. She's worked with 43 CEOs in situations like yours. She's tough, she's brilliant, and she doesn't let people bullshit themselves. Amanda took the folder, studying the names. These are incredible resources. They are, I agreed. We typically reserve them for our highest conviction investments. I'm extending them to you because I believe you can execute this pivot. But Amanda, understand, I will hold you accountable. Monthly board meetings, quarterly reviews, open access to your financials and metrics. This is professional now. I understand. And one more thing. I leaned forward. What happens with this investment is separate from what happens with our family. If you want to rebuild our relationship as sisters, that's separate work. It doesn't depend on whether Chen Analytics succeeds or fails. It depends on whether you're willing to see me as a full person, not just a reflection of your success. Amanda met my eyes. I want that. The relationship. Not because of the investment, because I miss having a sister. I miss the person you were before I started treating you as less than. I'm still that person, I said. I just learned to stop waiting for my family to notice. She nodded. Can we have lunch? Not to talk about business. Just to talk. Like sisters. I'd like that, I said. And I meant it. The term sheet was signed 3 days later. The $18 million hit Chen Analytics account within a week. Amanda hired Dr. Okonkwo and started executive coaching. Marcus Williams joined the board and immediately began pushing Amanda out of her comfort zone in exactly the ways she needed. The pivot was brutal. Amanda had to lay off 22 employees, everyone focused on mid-market. She had to cut 47 customers, which meant turning down revenue. She had to admit to her team that the company needed to fundamentally change direction. But she did it. With coaching and board support and Marcus's guidance, she executed the pivot. 6 months later, Chen Analytics signed their first Fortune 100 customer. A 3-year, $4.2 million contract. Then another. Then 3 more. Revenue accelerated. The company culture improved. The executive team restabilized with new talent. Amanda and I had lunch every other week. Sometimes we talked about business, she asked questions, I offered perspective from my portfolio companies. But mostly we talked about life. About the pressure we'd both felt growing up. About how our parents' expectations had warped us in different ways. About who we wanted to become. Our parents took longer to come around. Dad was furious for months that I'd made Amanda jump through hoops. Mom kept suggesting I should have just given her the money without conditions. I let them be angry. Their opinions didn't define me anymore. But slowly something shifted. Dad asked me about a business problem he was having. The first time he'd ever solicited my professional advice. Mom mentioned to her friends that both my daughters are very successful in different ways. Small steps, but steps. A year after that boardroom confrontation, Chen Analytics raised their Series D at a $410 million valuation. Cascade participated, of course. My return on that original $18 million? On paper, $127 million. If Amanda executed her 5-year plan, it could hit $500 million. But the real return wasn't financial. Last month, Amanda gave a keynote at Tech Summit, the same conference where years ago Mom had bragged about her 3,000-person audience. This time, 5,000 people filled the auditorium. Her topic, the pivot that saved my company, and how humility makes better leaders. She told the story. The struggling metrics, the desperation raise, the boardroom where her secret venture capitalist sister sat at the head of the table. The brutal feedback, the difficult pivot, the growth that came from admitting she didn't have all the answers. The best thing that ever happened to my company, she said from that stage, was someone loving me enough to tell me the truth. Even when that truth was devastating. Even when it meant confronting everything I'd built my identity around. She paused, looking toward where I sat in the audience. Rebecca, if you're watching this later, And I know you are because you watch all my talks now. Thank you. For seeing what my company could become. For believing I could become the leader it needed. And for never giving up on me as a sister, even when I'd given up on you. 5,000 people applauded. I sat in my office that night watching the video of her speech and thought about Grandma Lynn. About the $50,000 she left me that I'd used to build my career. About how she'd always said that real success meant lifting others up, not standing on them to climb higher. I hope I made you proud, Grandma, I whispered to the empty office. My phone buzzed. A text from Amanda. Dinner Sunday? I want to tell you about something exciting. And this time I want to hear about your week too. For real. I smiled and texted back, deal. If you've ever had to walk away from people who didn't value you or set boundaries that felt impossible, or become successful despite everyone's expectations, tell me your story in the comments. What would you have done? Does any of this feel familiar? Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money or connections or opportunities. It's honesty. Especially when, that honesty destroys the comfortable lies they've been telling themselves. And sometimes being family means caring enough to let someone fail so they can learn how to succeed for real.